Community and Wellbeing Officer. The Community and Wellbeing Officer advocates for and supports student mental health. They will work closely with university support services and champion student wellbeing.
Hello, I'm Grace, and I'm now joined by Danielle, who's running for Community and Wellbeing Officer, and this is just a content warning. This interview will discuss the topic of sexual violence, so if you're triggered by this, you can tune out for the next 5 minutes. So let's dive straight into your manifesto, Danielle. So the first point on your manifesto is about campaigning for fairer timetables for commuting students. So why is this a priority for you?
I think as a commuting student, it's basically cost. If you've got to come 4 days a week for an hour, 2 hours a day, it just doesn't work. If we can make timetables more inclusive, that means like if we could condense them over 1 or 2 days, contact hours, and maybe have lectures being able to be watched online, it would make it more cost effective for students who are commuting for the reason that they just literally can't afford to live in York.
And in an attempt to make, timetables more inclusive, you say, it'd be useful, more useful. Contact hours could be across 1 or 2 days. So in the case where students have, say, 30 to 40 contact hours a week, how will you make this work?
I suppose, like, on my course, which is obviously the most experience I've got, I'm in my 3rd year, but most of my hours are over 6 hours. And in semester 1, I was here 4 days a week for an hour one day, 2 hours another. But even if, I suppose it depends on how many hours you're doing, but it should be over like 1 or 2 days, really. And of course, you've already completed some work on making timetables more inclusive. Yeah. So how are you going to build more on the work that you've already done? You mentioned how you just sort of scratched. A lot of it is student communities. That information isn't passed on to departments. When you enrol, it's left with a central team. But if you're like a parent or a carer or disabled, any of them characteristics, that doesn't get fed back to the department. And if departments are aware of that, then timetables could be more accommodating before they're done.
Okay, and moving to your second manifesto point, you talk about how you will campaign to reinforce the relationships with local services and the university so there is a continuity of care for students. In terms of like the university's own services, does that mean that it's lacking, there isn't enough? No,
the university's services are absolutely outstanding, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. I have my own experience with it. My SVLO was my rock, and it was local services that let me down. If they could all work in harmony, then students wouldn't fall through them gaps.
And so you mentioned about reaching out to local services. What local services?
Survive, IDAS, like they're the ISVAs in the community. That's where they fell short for me, and I relied on the SVLO from the university more and more than I should have needed to, really.
And how are you going to go about reaching out to these local services?
If we could have a plan put in place where we all work together, like in some sort of harmony, so students could say, well, this is letting me down on this side. So if as a university, if we knew, or a student union, if we knew that student was lacking in that, wasn't getting the support that they needed, we could look at other ways of getting that support put in place for them.
Okay, and moving on to your third manifesto point, which covers student safety, you say that in order to ensure the continuity of student safety, the security team should have thorough training on the problems that students face. Now, the 2021 University Sexual Violence Action Plan, in there was a specific section dedicated to training, both staff, students and security as well. So what training are you campaigning for on top of the training that already exists?
I've had numerous conversations with students lately where they haven't felt safe on campus through stalking and harassment. And when it's been brought to student safety, they've been fobbed off and brushed off, and they don't feel like they're taken seriously. And I think that campus safety need to know that these issues exist for students, and they need to know how to deal with them.
And so, we haven't got much time left. So if you could describe your manifesto and campaign in 3 words,
I want to advocate for everybody. I'm a mature student, and I have lifelong experience with every issue you're probably going to face.
And why should students vote for you?
Let's make a change.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Danielle, running for Community Wellbeing Officer. We will now be heading over to Studio Red for another Community Wellbeing Officer.